Hello everyone, hope you are doing good today. In this video I'm going to explain you what is JWT and why should we use it, and I will also show you the structure and one example of JWT. So please watch this video till the end, otherwise you might miss something. So let's start. So what is JWT? JWT stands for JSON Web Token, is an open standard used to share security information between two parties, that is a client and a server. And all the JWT contents are encoded JSON object, including a set of claims or payload. Basically, its content are information which we generate in the server and then pass it to the client, and then client can again send it to the server, so that server can identify the client very easily. Okay, so all the JWTs are signed using a cryptographic algorithm to ensure that the claims or payload cannot be altered after the token is generated. Okay, and it's mainly used for authentication and authorization purpose. So in today's market, there are two type of authentication processes available. That is one using session ID, and the another one is JWT. So this two type of authentication is available mainly for client server applications. Those applications which require a client and a server, where server needs to validate the each request of the client, because we know that in browser we use HTTP protocol, okay, and HTTP protocol is stateless, so server will not be able to identify HTTP request whether it is already came to the server before or not. Okay, so now let me explain you what is session ID authentication. Okay, you can see in this diagram that client, which is the browser, and there is a server. Okay, so let's say one user is trying to log into his account. Okay, so user will provide username and password. Okay, and then it will send to the server. So what server will do? Server will validate the user, and then it will create a session for that user, and then it will store the session in server memory. Okay, and then it will pass the session ID as a cookies to the browser. Okay, and then the user wants to check his status of order. Let's say user want to check the status of his 123 order. Okay, so what user will do? Then the browser will send in the next request the session ID in the cookies, and then it will pass to the server. Okay, and then server will find the session from its memory, and then it will validate the user, and then it will pass the response to the browser. And if there is no session, then it will throw some error. Okay, so now let's see the problem with this authentication process. Okay, let's see this diagram. Okay, so let's say there is in your architecture diagram, in your production environment, you are using 3 server. Okay, so and there is a load balancer. Okay, which will forward the request to any one of this server, because in production you have huge traffic. Okay, so one server is not enough to handle all the requests, so that's why you need many servers. So let's say user 1 is trying to log into the system using request 1. Okay, so request 1 is sent to server 1. Okay, now server 1 is authenticated the user and created the session for user, and then passed the session information to the browser using a cookie. Okay, now let's say user 1 is doing another request, that is request 2, and the request 2 is send it to server with the cookie information. Okay, now server 1 can easily find the session information using the cookies, and then it will validate the user. Okay, now let's say server 1 goes down. Okay, now what will happen? The user will do another request, request 3, and now load balancer will try to send this request 3 to the server 2. Okay, and in server 2 you will not have the session for this user. Okay, so server will not be able to validate this user, then server 2 will throw an error. Okay, So this structure is valid if you are not using sticky session, okay? And if you are using sticky session, then what will happen if server 1 goes down, then the load balancer will not be able to process the request 3 anymore, okay? So this is the problem with session ID authentication, okay? Now let's solve this problem with JWT. So let me explain you what is JWT authentication, okay? So let's take the same example, okay? So here the user, that is the browser, is trying to log into the system using user login using email and password, okay? So user information, that is email and password, is sent to the server. Now what server will do? Server will validate the user, okay, and it will create the session and it will put the session in Redis, okay? So now here we are introducing another component, that is Redis, okay? So now server is not keeping the session in its own memory, okay? And then when it will create the session in Redis, it will add the key of the session inside the JWT, okay? And then it will pass the JWT to the user, okay? So in the next request, user will send the JWT in the HTTP header, and the server will retrieve it from the header, and then it will also retrieve the session ID from that JWT, and then it will try to search the session in Redis, okay? And then it will verify the user, and then it will respond to the browser. So now here, if one server goes down, then there is no problem, because another server will try to find the session in Redis, okay? So now let's go to the architecture diagram, okay? So here you see the new architecture with JWT, okay? Let's say user is trying to log into the system, and there is a load balancer. So load balancer will forward the request for the login to the server 1, and then server 1 will create the JWT, and then it will create the session in Redis, and it will put the session object in Redis, and then it will put the key of the session object in the JWT, okay? And then in the next request, browser will send that JWT to the load balancer, and then load balancer will forward it to any one of the server, okay? Here you don't need to manage the sticky session, okay? So that load balancer can forward it to the server where there is a less number of load, okay? Because now server don't need to store the session, so any of the request can be processed by any one of these server. Now you can say that if Redis goes down, so the benefit of Redis is that Redis has many replicas, okay? So you can create a Redis with 2 shards, so that there will be always many replicas for Redis, okay? So if one goes down, another can easily serve you, okay? So in this case, you can easily solve the problem using JWT. So let me show you some example of JWT and the structure of JWT. So you see the structure of JWT. So each and every JWT will have a header. Header will have the information, that the name of the algorithm, which algorithm you have used to generate the JWT, and then the payload, okay? So inside payload you will have the issue time, expiration time, so that you can check whether the JWT has expired or not. And then the signature. So signature is necessary so that no one can alter it. And now you see the browser sends encoded JWT, okay? So this is the JWT you will have inside browser. So in your program you will have a JSON object, and then when you will create the JWT, you will encode it like this, and then this JWT will be sent to the browser, and then browser will pass this JWT to the server for the next consecutive request, okay? And here you can see the decoded JWT. So this is the JWT. If you decode it using JWT.io, you can see this. So this is the header. You can see the algorithm, and this is the payload. So here you can put the session ID, user ID, and using this ID you can find the user in Redis. And the signature is very important, because suppose the client is trying to alter the JWT, and client has modified the expiration time, okay, so that the JWT can be valid for more than 365 days, okay, but it's not possible, because no one can alter it, because they don't have the signature. So only server has the signature, so server can generate the JWT and pass it to the client side. So it's not possible for the users to alter any of the payload or the header information. So guys, that's all for today's video. In my next video I am going to show you how you can generate a JWT using Java, okay. So if you want to learn more about JWT, please subscribe to my channel for more videos. Thanks for watching.